Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Sige.
Okay. Shall we start? Okay na? Okay. Hello? Diyos marhay na hapon ulit sa tuya, Gabos. Welcome to the fifth and last leg of the Partido State University Balongibog Talks COVID-19 segment. I am Vanessa Macy Romero, faculty of the College of Arts and Sciences, your moderator for this afternoon. Before anything else, on behalf of the organizing committee, we would like to thank you all for participating and tuning with us in this 5-day podcast series. We hope that these lectures have helped you in making this community quarantine a productive time for learning. May I also inform everyone that this is a recorded Zoom meeting and the video will be uploaded in the FB page and YouTube channel of the Museo de Isarog. Do like and subscribe. The Balangibog Talks COVID-19 segment is sponsored by Partido State University through the following academic centers. Center for Partido Studies, Institute, directed by Sir Roland John G. Bulao. Museo de Isarog, headed by Sir Earl John C. Hernandez. And the College of Arts and Sciences, headed by the Dean, Dr. Erlinda M. Basilia. For a recap of our series, last Monday, Dr. Hirona discussed some historical accounts of the epidemics from the Spanish period in the Philippines. Last Tuesday, Ms. Atole discussed the biology of COVID-19. Last Wednesday, I was able to discuss COVID-19 math models in the Philippine context. And yesterday, we gained some understanding on the economics in the Philippines amid this pandemic from Sir Bulao's lecture. He further discussed the trades-off faced by our fellow mga taga-Camarines Sur. Today, our very own curator of the Museo de Isarog will enlighten us on what term to use this COVID-19 pandemic. Should is it sorry? Is it social or physical distancing? Our lecturer is also an anthropology faculty of the College of Arts and Sciences, is currently completing his MA in anthropology at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. Without further ado, let me turn over this virtual stage to Mr. Earl John C. Hernandez.
Okay. Capture screen so that I can share screen.
Yeah.
Okay, let me quickly set it up. Okay, good afternoon again. For this afternoon, I'll be sharing a little bit of my my insights on the use of social and physical distancing during this COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so the global spread of the COVID-19 pandemic over the past months undeniably affected all of us. For this short lecture, I'm going to attempt to explore the familiar COVID-19 jargon we're currently using in avoiding or limiting contact with other members of our society, the social distancing and physical distancing terms. Okay. For this lecture, I want to reflect if during the COVID-19 pandemic, are we socially distant or probably just physically distant from each other? This lecture will explore some implications of using these jargons. Okay. The WHO and the DOH, since the start of the pandemic, had publicly announced preventive measures in order to contain the spread of the COVID-19 globally. Due to high risk of transmission through physical contact, such as handshaking, hugs, kisses, uh, that are embodied in our cultural norms. The health institutions advise us to practice social distancing. So from the health perspective, this is simply avoidance of mass gatherings or crowds, like religious gatherings, timba, conferences, leisures like malling, and and many more. So as you may see in this picture, my levels of social distancing ang advice ng WHO. Eventually, during the ECQ, um, it came to our understanding that social distancing is 1 meter distance from other people in order to avoid getting infected. Interestingly, the the World Health Organization changed social distancing to physical distancing. So at the end of this lecture, I do hope that we can understand why it is important to use or change the terminologies because these are not actually interchangeable. Bako sindang the same, it magkaiba ang meaning ninda. So also, this is for the public, including our public officials or local officials to know what is really appropriate terminology we should use in addressing a particular context. Firstly, let's try to imagine the social. Okay, so for social scientists, the social may be understood or simply understood as the term we use in our connecting or interacting with others aside from ourselves. So, or um, we can see social in terms of relationships within the framings of gender, religion, sexuality, or social institutions like family, um, education, economics, government, etc. So sociologist Bruno Latour points out that because of this constant shrinking of the meaning of the term social, we tend to limit social to humans and modern societies, like as you can see in this PowerPoint. So forgetting that the domains of the social is much more complex or extensive than that. So for example, he used Candole's explanation that corals, baboons, trees, uh, bees, ants, and whales are also social. So this extended meaning of social has been well recognized as well by disciplines like social biologists. Okay, so um, um, Latour suggests to look at 5 controversies as to what or how the social is made of, or how it is being crafted by the agency through controversies. So this posed to challenge on how we in the social sciences traditionally imagines the social. So social for Latour is crafted or can be traced through sources of through these 5 sources of uncertainties. Okay, so mainly the nature of groups, so how groups are formed, so okay, nature of actions, nature of objects. Objects entails that it also has a capacity of agency or objects having agency. Nature of facts, nature of studies under the social sciences umbrella. So, okay, what do we mean by these? Basically, in a nutshell, the term social, as we may not be able to realize, is that the social may be reassembled, no? Depending on how the agency crafts it. So social is not a structure that exists prior. So to that social is something that is constructed by the agency. Okay? Considering as well Latour's source of uncertainties in tracing the social, this tells us that uh, the social we imagine is more complex because it involves multiple actors, okay, institutions, and including non-actors within a crafted network or assemblage. Okay, so now let's I'll be showing some examples of articles that in the social sciences that try to explain the social distancing during these times. Okay. The article of John Hartigan, as a cultural anthropologist, attempts to examine the genealogy of the concept of social distance. For example, this is tied with racism, anti immigrants in the United States context, and so on. So, but I think that one of the very important contribution of the article is that it challenges and guide anthropologists on what anthropologists could do during the pandemic. So, for instance, he pointed out to develop insights on the concept of social distancing through species-wide analysis of humans. For example, the concept of animal turn of Ritvo and multiple species approach by Ogden, Hall, and Tanita. So we're also following a little bit of Latour's thinking of the social as not only between us as humans. Okay, so he also pointed out the significance of the Anthropocene. So the Anthropocene is the emerging epoch concerned in locating the human and environmental relations. So this is actually a good anthropological perspective to analyze this pandemic, especially considering as what Ms. Atole had pointed out last Tuesday, the virus comes from the animal host and the intermediate host. Okay, the article. So having said that, with Anthropocene, with the concept of Anthropocene, the article gave us initial steps to contextualize the rapid urbanization. Okay, other human and cultural modifications of the environment, landscapes, including alterations that caused this pandemic. So we may also consider to put into context the modernization and China's globality that turned into this pandemic. So this I personally think that um, it contextualizes that recently we are socially distancing and hating the bats, no, but we don't want to try to imagine or see that we the anthropos or as humans are the ones who started eating the bats, um, penetrated to and destroyed their natural habitats. So since our epoch began. Okay, so that's at least that's the context of the Anthropocene. So perhaps one of the initial reasons that triggered me to do this lecture is because of this particular article written by UCLA sociologist. Okay, okay. So they pointed out what the health experts promote is only physical distancing. Experts do not encourage us to do social disconnection, social exclusion, and rampant individualism, as mentioned in the article. That these terms correspond to the social distancing. Okay, so accordingly, despite the pandemic, we're still connected, socially engaged, and socially encouraged to be responsible to the social world. So even though we are physically distant, for instance, we can use technology to engage in our social world. So like what we're doing in this lecture. So while we will be seeing this in the next few slides, that this is happening as well in the Philippines and our own localities. Okay, the Philippine Sociological Society also joined the conversations by suggesting the use of the term interpersonal physical distancing. So instead of social distancing. So in summary, the PSS suggests that We can be physically close, but this does not entail a deep relationship. Kaya that's why they prefer to use interpersonal physical distancing. So, and for that context of giving the highlight of 1 to 2 meter distance, it is not actually social distancing. That I guess this is what have also been pointed out a while ago. Okay, for the following slides, I will try to show examples of our social activities within our social world that we do during the pandemic. So activities that we may use to reflect in answering the question. So and so the alarm of the pandemic does not enable us to be socially distant with our family, kin, friends, and other social relationships. So in fact, personally, the imposition of the ECQ strengthened the ties within the social relationships. So with the imposition of the work from home enabled a confined physical space among working parents and studying children, including those who went home, na, including those who went home. So working from home cut the traveling time of going to work or school and going home. So no more traffics and hassle of commuting for most, especially those in metro cities. Okay, so this opens for more opportunities to strengthen our relationships and more bonding time. Oh, in our family, the cabin fever with TikTok, okay, shaped a game contest of who among us are better in lip syncing. Okay, so they are the winners. Okay, 2,000 pesos for the first prize, 1,000 pesos for the second prize, and other consolation prizes were given by my aunt. Okay, so I also want to take this opportunity to share the hashtag Eat and Help advocacy of my brother. So even though he is still finishing his culinary trainings, through his cooking skills, with the help of his girlfriend, family members, network of friends, and other people of Goa who saw his post on Facebook, he was able to sell very good homemade shawarma. Um, with the proceeds donated for feeding at least 80 to 90 packs of snacks for Goa frontliners. So kudos. Okay. Alongside with communicating or recommunicating with family members and friends. So I have observed emergence of popularity of online trash tokens or rambulan. So it is interesting to know that rambulan is now online in the context of these pages. No? So however, I strongly disagree that mga taga-Naga ang mas gwapo. So baka dahil pa kayo sanda nakadigdi sa partido. Okay? So so the private and business sector and international aid did not stop um did not stop to find venues to facilitate social actions in providing support and help flattening the curve, including game shows like Wawawin. I saw it on Facebook. Uh, they turned online and provides cash incentives or prizes for the winners. So also, scientists and modelers, as what have been pointed out by Miss Vanessa last Wednesday, did not cease to help in flattening the curve. So it's actually they're the one who's more responsible on these policies. Okay, including historians like Dr. Herona joined the social by sharing as the Spanish archives through his online publications of the Spanish Philippines epidemic narratives. Okay. In a more political side, we have observed active online people's participation, mostly in Twitter and Facebook, in the Philippines. So, even though this is not even though that this is not an election period, so on certain issues like the NBI for summoning the Pasig City Mayor, we have observed as well the legal sector, the law students, the political science students participated on the conversation. So like they help us understand or review on the constitutionality of, for example, the ex post facto law. Okay. Um, we have also a number another an NBI attempt to summon the vice president for competing with the government efforts. Okay, so interestingly, the Philippine online sentiments were heard, and Duterte interestingly fired the PACC commissioner. So, however, this resulted for online humor of hashtag Dobredo love team. So, okay. Uh, Coco Pimentel, summoned by the NBI, and DOH retracted the 5,000 peso daily allowance for healthcare volunteers, and also including online protest on VIP testing and many more. So we have also observed on the early week or two of the ECQ that DBS pages were daily attacked and reported by maybe bored or kadakol ng ngunyang time na working from home public, no. So I commend friends and colleagues for doing this. Okay. Recently, with the class suspensions all over Luzon due to the ECQ, including some cases of suspensions of alternatives like online classes, UP students called for hashtag mass promotion. Okay? So unfortunately, the BOR yesterday ata or kang nakaaging aldaw decided to end the semester, I guess on April 30, on the April 30. Students, however, will still have to comply for the requirements set by their professors for at least a year. So some dubs it as hashtag mass INC. Okay. So walang iwanan nga because gabos will have to comply. So but at least majority of faculty if not gabos from the Departamento ng Kasaysayan decided for mass promotion or passing all students taking kasaysayan subjects. So other schools like Ateneo de Manila on the other hand um, on on the other hand, pass their students, no. So semester um, uh, recently ended, they passed and with full refund. So some cases like this tells us that the pandemic does not stop us to dynamically respond socially, like to participate in rally and other social obligations like continuing our education through online and including social care, like Ateneo de Manila's compassion for mass passing their students with refunds. So indeed, cura personalis is real. So uh, moreover, with restrictions of mass gathering, yes, this is part of the social. CHED encourages to do alternatives like considering online graduation ceremonies. So through this alternative, it tinkers and the supposed social distance into a mere physical distancing. We have also observed popularity of webinars and online meetings. Okay, so like this Balongbog Talks COVID-19 segment. Okay, so now, in the following slides, we will visit how the Catholic Church, with special focus in Bicol, Philippines, accommodated this pandemic, while at the same time tinkered the physicality of religious practices by going beyond it. No? That we may call it as live religion or live Catholicism. So as a health advisory, Eucharistic celebrations gone live. Okay, gone live. Some commented the familiar YouTube vloggers terminology of "Welcome to my channel," to welcome to my chapel. So with masses going live, it accommodates the desire and continuation of spiritual um, obligations and hunger of some Catholics. So I don't think that religiosity is diminished by having it online, but uh, this this may be a possible question that we can venture, especially for anthropologists of Christianity. Okay, last March 19, across the entire Catholic churches with different time zones in the globe, uh, as one joined the Holy See, Pope Francis, to pray the Rosary. So the Archdiocese of Cáceres as well invited the Catholic communities in Bicol to participate. Social media and media connected Catholics despite of geographic separations. So so the world prayed as one, like it's a global church, that if we may prefer the term. So we have also observed the Archdiocese of Cáceres for initiating the Kasari Kadamay sa COVID-19 program. So that's Father Eric and also Father Don. I've been seeing him doing online masses where he also asked for online intentions. Okay. The 2020 Holy Week in the Philippines is probably one of the most unique Holy Week celebration in our recent memories. So we have celebrated the Holy Week mostly online and personal reflections or um, okay. True. Though most parishes in the archdiocese had done it with with um, with physical processions, ladies' participation was observed within the confines of their homes, including participation in live broadcast. So, um, okay, I'm running out of time, so I guess I'll wrap it up. Okay. In Goa, for example, it's a very long tradition for most families to cater the images and prepare it for procession. So along with other material cultures like flowers, elegant dresses, like the caro, etc. So the Pares family, for example, shared with me how they celebrated the 9-day novena during the Holy Week. One of them shared me his thoughts as to why they continued to practice despite of the pandemic. So accordingly, they feel incomplete for not displaying the image as it is part of the tradition that they are accustomed to while growing up. So more importantly, the pagdungaw sa luwas, including the online world, tells us that there is a continuing presence of religiosity tied to the practice, even they are prohibited to do the procession. So the tradition being online invites participation of others outside the family, the devotees, voyadores, and others to become part of the collective experiences. So they also do mobile processions, okay, of Ina. Okay, last two slides. On the contrary, to the point that I've been suggesting in this lecture, um, I think it is also fair to take into consideration some of the emerging issues or concepts that contradicts to the appropriateness of physical distancing in our present societies. For example, if we'll take a quick survey on the labor and economic sector, most workers were separated from their works during the ECQ. So their separation from work implies economic limitations that also limits their participation in the social. So like buying commodities by they either need or want, or leisures and something of pleasure. So this was also briefly pointed out by Sir Roland Bulao yesterday. So another example that I think that may be worthy of paying attention to is the social exclusion or maybe marginalization through racism. We know that the COVID-19 pandemic comes from China. So a lot of speculations or conspiracy theories, if we prefer to use the term, are circulating online advocating an anti-China policy, anti-China propaganda. So the already existing anti-China narrative, or the Chekwa for Filipinos, in our terminologies, may grow into a uh, completely racist social categorization, suggesting that maybe it is indeed appropriate to use the term social distancing if we continue to look at it in this context. So to end my short lecture, in this pandemic, we may now realize that we never cease to be socially active. As social beings, we always find alternative spaces or venues to facilitate our being social. So this then may be seen as an opportunity for us to start considering a new and changing space of socialization. So like the social media or the internet socialization. So the social media, the internet during these trying times, even with physical limitations, bridges and sustains our being socially connected in our within our society. That we can be social even we are physically distant. So to end, I suggest to consider and explore further the narratives on the social media as the newly crafted social during the COVID-19 pandemic. So thank you for listening, and just marvelous.
Okay, thank you so much for that informative lecture, Sir Earl. So at this point, we are now open for questions. I think we can accommodate 2 to 3 questions. So for the first one, we have from Sir Roland John Bulao. In the Philippines, it seems that social distancing is still widely used. Why do you think is this so?
Okay. First, I guess because the first term that thank you, sir, for the question. So I guess it's because the first term that the WHO, the DOH earlier used was the term social distancing. So that's why ito yung na-embed or na-adapt natin sa ating sa tuyang terminologies on understanding these particular definitions. So kaya it is, I think, but the WHO, binawi nila yung term, pinalit nila ng physical distancing primarily because of social scientists who told them that the health sector that social is a more complex terminology to mas na dapat gamitin, uh, na hindi nga dapat gamitin kung ang gusto mo lang i-highlight ay 1 to 2 meter physical distancing. So I guess that's a point for the social scientists on correcting these terminologies. Okay.
Okay, thank you for your answer. Any more questions from our participants? I have a question. Maybe a follow-up from the question of Sir Bulao. So, sa papaanong paraan kaya natin change yung use of social to physical distancing na word in the Philippines context?
Okay. So first, um, the the government and also uh, the yung mga institutions responsible for info disseminating, like for example, for the news, the health institutions should avoid the use of term social distancing and highlight physical distancing. So that this should be adopted by the LGUs, from the top to the bottom institutions, so that the public can actually understand it, na mas magamit or mapalitan na yung paggamit yung frequency ng term ng social distancing to physical distancing. So if we're referring to to 1 meter to 2 meter distance. That's the appropriate term is physical distancing. But if we're looking for isolation, exclusion, so mas mag-appropriate na gamitin yung social distancing. Okay.
Okay. And your for the last question, again from Sir Bulao, how would this pandemic alter centuries-old traditions of shaking hands, beso-beso, and kissing?
Okay. Um, uh, this particular acts or gestures have been embedded had been embedded in our um, social imagination or practices. So so we with this alarm of pandemic, and dahil lalo na wala pa tayong vaccines to control this, so it will totally change um, the cultural gestures like this. So though it will also, like for example, um, in a more I guess deeper um, insight, that for example, trust. No? So, may virus ka ba o wala? So, before I do these practices or before I shake hands, I kiss you, may disease ka ba o wala? So, how do we know that? So, we don't know unless we do, we are tested. So, there will be a total change in our behavior, or in our perception of this particular gestures that is actually embedded in our